Aren't we about to start?
Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3.
It is Teleforum, and I'm already laughing. My guest today, the first hour, I got to explain it. Jack Manning is here. Tony Amadio is here. What that means is Ask the Commissioners is here. We do this about once a month. If you want to watch this, you can watch it. It's on the Facebook live stream. If you want to ask the commissioners a question, you can do that by calling, or you can do that by posting in the comments section on the live Facebook feed. First off, thank you both for being here.
Always fun to be with you.
There was
Good
almost
morning.
a knockdown. Good morning. See, he's calm now. We got him wound up on the Pirates a couple minutes ago. And he was, all right, where do you want me to start? Because I got plenty of questions. I got a press release to reference. I should start with reassessment, because isn't that the rule? It's like a part of fraternity charter. So where are we with reassessment? Jack, would you like to go first?
I always defer to the chair of the reassessment, the assessment committee. So I'll let Tony go first.
Mr. Assessment
We
Committee.
are exactly where we're supposed to be.
The streets of
to the
favor
best
are
of my
yours.
knowledge at this time.
Well,
today.
no, wait a minute. I heard that snuck in, no, right, to the best of my knowledge.
Things change.
That's how many changes have occurred through this process, not including the COVID stuff, because we're out from under the COVID stuff as far as the reassessment goes, right?
Yeah, but
Right.
not as many as you think. I mean,
Okay.
the big change was we got 6 months behind, and you just can't be 6 months behind on this because it's got to revolve around the calendar year. So the courts pushed it back, the final dispensation of everything and the taxes being paid a full year. So that does look like there were a lot of changes, but really there weren't that many fundamental changes. It just simply delayed our ability to do some of the field work and in-person assessment a few months, but enough to get us off schedule by one full year.
Homeowners should start getting notices probably in the first quarter of next year. But the numbers are not to be there to panic, because it's a different whole set of numbers.
Okay,
Like
what's different? Is it different than something they've already seen?
The numbers are based today on 50%. So if your number is 50,000, that's 50% of your assessed value. It's going to be 100% in this new reassessment. That doesn't mean your taxes are going to double. That's just another number to deal with. The reason, of course, we got sued to get to this point.
Right.
But the reason we do a reassessment is once you get to that number, which we have, it reaches that common level ratio number where the balance is completely off, then you try to get a new number, and then you can lower the taxes that's based on that number. For example, right now I think we're paying 26 mills. Is that what I think that's what the county tax?
26. Yeah.
26 mills. Now, your number might be 50,000, but under the new number, that number may double, but your tax assessed are going to go down way down to 5 or 6 or 4, or whatever the number is.
The millage will adjust so that you're not.
Right.
Can I ask
That's
a-
what they're working on right now.
Okay.
That's that coupled with field work,
Okay.
and they're going back out in the field and rechecking if somebody had to set a card in and said, "Well, I don't have 3 bathrooms, I only have 2." Those kinds of things.
Can I ask a ridiculously stupid question?
There are no ridiculously stupid
It's
questions.
spoken like a teacher,
Yes.
okay? But I was married to a teacher. I know the questions that are stupid, you don't say that. You turn your back and you go, "Oh, I weep for the future." And then you turn back, all right? What's a mill?
A thousandth, I think it's 1,000th of a percent.
Oh, so it's based on the metric system. That's why
is.
I'm confused.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a thousandth of a percent.
I think that's what that mill
So
means.
100.
Don't try to do
Yeah,
that.
no,
yeah, don't-
I just glazed over like a dog watching a ceiling
That's why we
fan.
hire
Well,
people to do those kinds of
and again,
calculations
That's
for
why
us.
we brought people
the,
in.
The
Right.
bottom line is we're on schedule, on track, within the budget that was allocated to conduct the assessment.
Mm-hmm.
All of the field work is essentially done. They are now making the calculations on what each individual parcel is going to be assessed at. And when folks start getting that, as Tony referred to in the beginning of the year, that will be what your assessed value is. So for instance, if you were to go tomorrow to a real estate agent and say, "I want to sell my house,"
Okay.
and they would say, "It's probably worth X."
Make the number
That-
simple, $100,000.
$100,000, right?
All right.
Your current assessed value may be 50,000, or maybe even be 25,000,
Right.
depending on where
Because
you live.
it's
It could
Because
be
that was the value
75,000.
40 years ago.
40
But
years,
that was
yeah.
the value back
Forever.
in the 80s when it was originally assessed. Now this is coming back at 100% assessed value of what your home is worth.
Okay.
So
Today.
people are going to know that today. But that doesn't mean our millage is going to stay the same. Our millage will offset because, again, this is a revenue neutral process. We're not allowed to make a windfall profit off of this reassessment. It's to be neutral. So people need to understand that, and there'll be plenty of communications, plenty of people around all next year to be able to educate folks, discuss that, and make sure that people understand how they got that value, what that value means, and what it means for their tax bill, which would be coming out at the end of 2023.
Tony Amadio and Jack Manning are my guests. It's Ask the Commissioners on Beaver County Radio, 1230 WBBP, 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM, 95.7 FM, all presented by St. Barnabas. Is the number one question you get, how much are my taxes going to go up? Is that the number one question?
I don't know that we get that as a question, but that's the number one concern.
Okay.
Clearly, that everybody, when you say you're doing a reassessment,
Yes.
that's the biggest concern. Are my taxes?
Right.
So they're not asking if it's going to cost them money. They're yelling it's costing me money, and we don't know that.
They're fearful that
Okay.
this is good, and quite frankly, that was a concern. That's why Tony and Dan and previous administration appealed that all the way through the courts, because we have an aging demographic, a lot of people on fixed income.
Right.
A lot of people who are struggling right now to make ends meet and pay their taxes. The fear is in some of these communities with the aging demographic and a lot of retirees on Social Security, and that's their only income, are going to get taxed out of their properties. And that's something that we were very concerned about, that I inherited this.
We all did.
Court mandated reassessment. So that's always the big fear when you do those. At the end of the day, though, and Tony's the one that reinforced this with me over the years, third go up, a third go down, then a third stay about the same. So it's those neighborhoods where it's going to go up that will feel.
But it's based on blocks of money, pots and buckets of money.
Okay.
Per se. You have just say the Central Valley School District is comprised of Potter, Center, Monaca. They have a pot of money that pays all their revenues.
Okay.
That pot of money is going to be shifted on who's paying what, but it's still the same pot of money.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Pot doesn't grow.
The problem is when you have a pot of money, a bucket of money, where one area or two areas, the assessed values just based on economics has gone down. Say you had a house 80 years ago, and there's places where houses were worth $80,000, $90,000, and now worth $40,000, $50,000. Somewhere in that municipality or that either school district or municipality is going to have to make up that difference. That's where that shifting is going to occur.
Okay.
The newer houses taxes shouldn't go up. Shouldn't.
Shouldn't.
Never. Yeah. The older houses that have been around prior to 1982, those taxes are going to go up because the houses were worth $30,000 then.
Oh, yeah.
Now worth $150,000, maybe $200 in some cases. But that's what this is doing. It's reshifting the who's paying what based on what paying your fair share is what we're told. Now,
when you say is what we're told, who's telling you that?
Well, the Tyler,
the people that are doing the company doing all of the information.
See, the problem is we take all the heat on this.
Yes.
The problem's in Harrisburg, and I say it all the time, and they need to do something like other states around us where you have this is done every 5 years, every 2 years.
How did we go 40 years?
That's a good question.
Well,
I've only been here 22.
So we can only put half of it on you.
Right. But it is about
Okay.
tax fairness, though, at the end of the day. Because when I moved up here 22 years ago, I bought an older home because it was a perfect property for my wife and I to come up here as empty nesters. I brought people up with me when I transferred up here from other places that built houses, and they were being assessed and taxed at a much higher rate than some of their neighbors in the same neighborhood where they just built a new home. So, but any of those new homes, as Tony said, are already going to be at a fairly close assessed value of what they were just built at in the last 5-10 years.
All right.
It was much older homes where that may change.
And guess who owns the much older homes?
The people on the fixed incomes.
to afford to pay it the least.
Yes.
Right.
And see, there needs to be something. I mean, once you're 65 years old and retired, there has to be some credit, but that has to be done in Harrisburg. We can't legislate that. We can't change that county code. County code is passed by the people our legislators in Harrisburg. And until they change that law, we have to follow it.
Yeah. We need to be able to do this on a much more frequent basis so we don't get into these big, long gaps and there's a shock to the system. The other thing I'll say is we haven't raised county taxes for 6 years now, and we have no intention of raising county taxes. But what exacerbates it, and what a lot of people complain to us about, are the school taxes and the local taxes. And that's where the bulk of
mostly the school.
Mostly the school, not necessarily the municipality.
What is the
but
complaint?
The school districts.
What's the complaint? My kid doesn't
my
go
taxes
there.
are going up. My taxes are going up.
Okay.
The only taxes that are going up every year are school district taxes.
Yeah, if you live in a municipality, you're getting your streets plowed, you're getting your taxes. But if you're paying school taxes, which is your biggest tax, and you haven't had a kid in school for 50 years, that's not fair. It really isn't.
Yeah, because the millage in a lot of those school districts are 2, 3, 4, 5 times the county tax. Maybe not 5, but 2 or 3 times the millage of what we have at the county level, the 26 mills
Right.
that Tony referred to. And most of the municipal taxes are, minimal,
Tony, what
mills.
would you have Harrisburg do? If you could take everybody in Harrisburg by the ear and say, here's the problem, here's how we're going to fix it, what would you
Just
tell them?
agree to disagree and sit down and make laws happen. That's the first start.
Okay.
I mean, our board here, we have Democrats and Republicans, but we don't always vote. We don't always agree democratically or on a Republican
Right.
base. And when you're in that situation, whether you're in Washington D.C. or in Harrisburg, you're forced a lot of times to vote on party lines. That's got to change. I mean, these laws, they got to be able to sit down and fix things that are broken. And there are a lot of things broken in Pennsylvania that needs to be fixed. But if you don't get a consensus, there's no way to fix those problems. You can't even sit down and let's talk about reassessment. As soon as being a Democrat, as soon as you talk about it, the Republicans are against it. Mm-hmm. Or else they'll stop it. They'll stop it they won't argue publicly, but they'll stop it in their committees. We can't stop anything in any committee because the citizens is right there, right in front of us, and they're telling us.
The committee is the counter. They're yelling at
Well,
you over.
Not to throw the Senate in Harrisburg under the bus, but
No, go ahead.
I was just with Representative Kale and Mayor Kenya Johns at a thing on hydrogen and carbon capture down at Washington and Jefferson University. And somebody asked Josh Kale, well, is this going to happen with a bill? And he goes, well, everybody says good ideas go to die in the Senate. So they just sit there, and that's what Tony says. You think you have a bipartisan good solution to something, and then it gets stalled in the committee for political reasons.
And I have a
it is
lot of
very
good friends
frustrating.
there.
So he
Republicans
recognizes
and
that.
Democrats both, and I get along with them very well.
Same
It's just
here.
that when they go there, they don't seem to want to jump.
But we've known for a long time, and even when I was with the chamber, we have advocated for something other than property tax funding schools.
Yeah.
We know that's an inequitable system that has to be. Rich schools continue to be rich schools, poor schools continue to be poor schools because of the property tax being what funds it. If some of the poorer schools, struggling schools with low enrollment stuff, aren't getting extra subsidies from Harrisburg, they couldn't exist right now. So something needs to be done about property tax. I don't have a magic bullet to solve that, but there's different tax arrangements that you could make where it could de-emphasize property tax. That would help us a lot with this thing, and increase usage tax, sales tax, other corporate taxes. Different things that collectively could go to fund.
When you see a big corporation come in and get a huge amount of tax breaks, does that kind of annoy you?
Well, historically, they don't in Pennsylvania, and that's been one of the things that has kept us from being as competitive, quite frankly, with Virginia and Maryland and Ohio and some others, is that our corporate tax rate was much higher.
Okay.
It's now being lowered to 4.99%. And they're trying to offset that with some other taxes. If they can do that for the corporate tax, they ought to be able to find a solution.
But you still need
for
the
property
incentives.
tax.
You still got to have the incentives. If I can build a plant in Tennessee for $2 million cheaper than I can build it here, I'm going to go to Tennessee.
I'm $2 million less in the red when I turn it on.
And that was the complaint I got from some environmentalists about the cracker plant. I said, okay, so we should lose the cracker plant and have it in Ohio and still have all the residuals from that, but none of the economic benefit of it. I mean, if somebody's going to say you're going to spend $6 billion in your backyard,
Yeah.
and Tony and I think agree on this as well. I mean, we've sworn an oath to look out for the health, safety, and economic well-being of every resident. So you have to walk a line to determine the health and safety portion versus the economic well-being, because that's why you make the tough calls, and they aren't black and white issues.
Right.
Always, and you have to weigh everything in aggregate and say, well, no, certainly it makes sense that we're taking a site like a old zinc smelter, cleaning it up, putting a cracker plant, getting the economic benefit of those jobs, that input, that disposable income by those workers being spent in our small towns and mom and pop shops and every place else.
They did an $80 million remediation there. $80 million. Who else was going to do that?
All right, hang on a second. Going to go to news. You guys led me perfectly into my next subject. Absolutely. Jack Manning is my guest. Tony Amadio is my guest. I'm asking the commissioners. This is being live streamed on our Beaver County Radio Facebook page. And Jack, if you think about it, China's just going to send all the bad air over here anyway.
Well, it's
News is next on
as the world
Teleforum.
turns.
You're welcome.
John Fetterman pretends he's Pennsylvania tough, but he lived off his rich parents until he was 49. Fetterman admitted it. In 2016, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that Fetterman's parents were, quote, his principal source of income, sponging off his rich parents into middle age while pretending to be a blue-collar tough guy. Fetterman is a freeloader and a fraud. Since Fetterman needed mom and dad to pay his bills until he was pushing 50, it's not a shock he didn't pay his taxes either. It took 60 liens and lawsuits before he paid up. And after not paying his taxes, Fetterman wants to raise yours. Fetterman supports tax hikes, hitting families making under $75,000 a year. Fetterman's for higher taxes, for real Pennsylvania families who don't live off their parents like him. John Fetterman's a taxing far-left fraud. Senate Leadership Fund paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.senateleadershipfund.org.
Take a quick look around your home. Chances are you may find you have a collection of unwanted household chemical products such as paints, automotive fluids, cleaning products, and more. The Pennsylvania Resources Council and the Beaver County Recycling Center will once again provide residents with the opportunity to safely and properly dispose of these unwanted chemicals on Saturday, October the 8th at the Brady's Run Park Recycling Center. A $20 fee covers the cost of disposing up to 10 gallons or 50 pounds of chemicals. Advanced registration is required. For a complete list of acceptable materials, visit prc.org or call PRC at 412-488-7490. Many chemical products, including paints, solvents, fluids, pesticides, insecticides, and cleaners used to maintain our homes, gardens, and vehicles, also represent hazards to people and animals and require special methods for safe disposal. So gather all of your unwanted products and bring them to Brady's Run Park Recycling Center on Saturday, October the 8th. Do the right thing and dispose of them the right way.
Insurance doesn't adequately describe what we sell. This is Bill Laughlin from Laughlin Insurance Agency. Sure, affordable insurance is the means that allow us to do it, but we really provide at the Laughlin Insurance Agency is peace of mind. It's true, worrying about risk can take the fun and joy out of almost everything. We see every day how having peace of mind can lead to more enjoyment, which, last time we checked, is a fairly priceless commodity. Make life more enjoyable. Visit LaughlinInsAgency.com.
Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com. Here's Frank Sparks.
Hey, good morning on this Thursday morning, October the 6th of 2022. Your Beaver County Radio weather forecast for today is calling for increasing clouds throughout the day. High's going to be up to 71 degrees. We'll have a complete Beaver County Radio weather forecast coming up for you right after we have this look at news. The Beaver Valley Hub for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, known as the Beehive, held its first meeting at the Carnegie Free Library in Beaver Falls on Wednesday. The Beehive will serve as a resource center for young entrepreneurs and those looking to start their own businesses in Beaver County. Beehive President John Hartnecki spoke about the connections that have been made and the questions they hope to answer.
We've been working on this probably for 5 going on 6 years and trying to develop this. And this isn't, we've kind of stepped away. I said this is kind of an offshoot from Penn State. This is no longer a Penn State project per se. We've engaged Geneva College and the Community College of Beaver County as partners in this in terms of bringing in resources for training and for mentorship and for other resources. So we're really looking at this as a community activity, a community project. And we've been working closely with our friends here in Beaver Falls in terms of what can we do to meet the needs of this community? How can we integrate ourselves into this community?
The Beehive will hold regular meetings at the Carnegie Free Library until their permanent location in Beaver Falls is finished. The full story about yesterday's meeting is at beavercountyradio.com. In his campaign for a crucial U.S. Senate seat, Democrat John Fetterman takes credit for transforming Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor's office into a bully pulpit to advance progressive causes. Records from his time in office show a different portrait. They show that Fetterman typically kept a light work schedule and was absent often from state business. That's according to an Associated Press review of his daily calendars and attendance records. The review found he had nothing listed on his schedule during nearly one-third of his workdays in the $179,000 a year job. Fetterman says he's shown he can have an impact beyond the prescribed power of a given office. The Italian Sons and Daughters is now saying it will appeal a judge's ruling that Cruz can remove the Christopher Columbus statue in Schenley Park. Their response comes just one day after an Allegheny County judge ruled that Cruz can remove the statue from the park should they choose so. The judge said there's precedent to allow the city to remove it because it is in a city-owned park and it represents government speech. In the fall of 2020, the Pittsburgh Art Commission voted to uproot the statue, and then Mayor Bill Peduto approved the decision. The Italian Sons and Daughters have claimed the mayor alone can't unilaterally override a duly enacted ordinance. The OPEC Plus alliance of oil exporting countries has decided to sharply cut production to support sagging oil prices. The move yesterday could deal the struggling global economy another blow and raise politically sensitive pump prices for U.S. drivers just ahead of key national elections. Energy ministries meeting at the Vienna headquarters of the OPEC oil cartel cut production by 2 million barrels per day at their first face-to-face meeting since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Besides a token trim in oil production last month, the major cut is an abrupt turnaround from months of restoring deep cuts made during the depths of the pandemic and could help alliance members Russia weather a looming European ban. Attorney General Josh Shapiro today announced that Desiree Fettel of Butler County has pled guilty to one count of delivery of a controlled substance for her role in the mass distribution and trafficking of heroin and fentanyl from Philadelphia to Butler County. This drug operation transported an estimated kilo of heroin fentanyl for resale in Butler County with a street value of up to $400,000. The investigation, which utilized the 46th statewide investigating grand jury, identified 5 individuals who operated a drug trafficking ring between January and October of 2020. Desiree Fetterwall, Quinzel Powell, Jody Shirley, Brandy Zedeker, and Crystal Pacoots orchestrated the sale and distribution of more than 1,000 grams or 50,000 doses of heroin and fentanyl between Philadelphia and Butler counties. Within Butler County during this time window, fentanyl and Pacoots each sold approximately 256 and 820 grams or 12,800 and 41,000 doses of heroin fentanyl respectively. Shirley and Zedeker acted as distributors for the heroin and fentanyl being sold by Fettel and Pacoots. Desiree Fetterall has pleaded guilty to one count of delivery of a controlled substance. Sentencing is scheduled for January of next year.
Here's the Beaver County forecast on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.
Increasing clouds throughout the day today. High's going to be 71 degrees. Gradually becoming clear overnight tonight with a low of 51. Tomorrow, a slight chance of morning showers. Otherwise, it'll be mostly cloudy with a high of 56. And we have a beautiful but cool weekend ahead. Mostly sunny and a high of 57 on Saturday. Sunday, areas of morning frost. Otherwise, mostly sunny with a high of 61 degrees. And then for your Columbus Day, mostly sunny, high of 64. That is a look at the news for now. I'm Frank Sparks, Beaver County Radio News, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and beavercountyradio.com.
You're listening to Ask the Commissioners on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. The Commissioners are awaiting your questions by calling 724-843-1888 or 724-774-1888. Today's show is brought to you by Huntington Bank, the Laughlin Insurance Agency, and Beaver Valley Auto Mall. Click beavervalleycars.com. You can also post comments or questions in the Facebook Live video feed. And now, it's your chance to Ask the Commissioners, right here on Beaver County Radio.
Off air, sometimes you might wonder what people talk about when you can't hear us. It's Ask the Commissioners. Jack Manning is my guest. Tony Amadio is my guest. They're commissioners. My name's Eddie Crow. We were just talking about the metric system. We were.
Yeah.
Mills and things like that. And I remember in 5th grade, they told us, you're going to have to learn this. This is going to be world. No, he didn't.
1976, maybe.
A grade school.
Yeah.
The metric system.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Then we dug in our heels and nobody changed
said-
that.
That's it, right. The American
They said
civil-
it's easier than the U.S. system.
Now, does it make me numerically bilingual that I can translate from one to the other? Is that a resume thing? I know 0.62 miles is a kilometer.
My car tells me that.
It's the big
That's
money
why
you
we
get.
have- that's why we have
as-
smartphones.
As the
That's why we
commissioner.
have smartphones.
All right.
My cars are both used.
While we're talking about telling
I
you
can
that,
Google anything.
while we're talking about telling you that, a kilogram's 2.2 pounds. You know who
Yeah.
knows that?
Congratulations.
Weight weenies with bicycles and drug dealers.
Oh, there you go.
Nobody else knows that. While we're talking about, this was such a serious show the first half
I
hour.
know.
Before the break, we got talking about the cracker plant, and I just want to ask both of you, because you deal with the public far more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody engages you in the conversation is about the cracker plant, typically, is there a typical, what's the conversation about? Jack, I'll start with you.
Well, it's rarely is anybody actually talking about the cracker plant all that much.
Okay.
But I still maintain it's like 80-20 positive towards the cracker plant, what it means, the hope that it gave Beaver County, putting Beaver County on the map, the investment that Shell, I mean, Tony talked about the $80 million remediation. I mean, they redid the rail lines, they redid the highway, the state and the federal government put in new infrastructure money, and we had more investment to support that building coming to Beaver County in the last 5 or 6 years than probably had the previous 10 or 12 years. So it's had a tremendous impact on the quality of life from that standpoint. Most of it's people concerned and worried about the water and air pollution. And the best thing I can tell people is, those plants that were built and the plants that are, I think, being unfairly compared to the cracker plant, the Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, the Houston Ship Channel, those are plants that were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So while some of those might have been a Mercedes, a 1970s Mercedes back then, we're talking about a 1970 Mercedes versus a 2022 Mercedes.
Right.
And I think most people would tell you that the 2022 Mercedes has advanced significantly from that 1970s Mercedes, which was a good,
How did they
a good
advance?
car.
Did they advance in terms of safety, or did they advance in terms
absolutely.
of productivity, or
Processing, process controls,
Okay.
engineering design, monitoring. The technology has gone so much further. It's not even just in process controls alone, from the 70s controls, where there was a guy in an operating room, and I know I lived inside those fence lines.
I know you did.
For a long time. They had to actually dial and make changes. Now things are all automated with state-of-the-art advanced technology on everything. Their flaring system, their safety systems, their lighting, their protocols, everything has just advanced exponentially from when my career started. Actually, 50 years ago, October 2nd, 50 years ago, I started my job as a shift working lab tech in a polypropylene plant. And the technology from there to now, it's not even comparable. So most people, when they come up and ask me, it's really about what's happening downstream, where are some of the other businesses and that kind of stuff. They know where I stand
Right.
on the cracker plant. And I admit my bias, having worked for 35 years in that industry, but I don't let that bias ignore the fact that there are concerns if you have people with childhood asthma and those kinds of things about the air quality and stuff. But again, I make a risk assessment based on the aggregate information, past history and future history, that plant's going to be safe and well maintained. There are very few companies in the world, a handful, that could make a world-class plant like Shell is doing. If there was some name I didn't recognize on the front of that, I'd be a lot more worried about who's putting this thing together.
Eddie Crow's oil and shopping.
That would make
emporium.
me very nervous.
I'm not going to get the permits for that, am I?
No, probably not.
And it's about technology, as Jack alluded to. The technology has improved over 50 years to the point now where I always like to talk in analogies or explain to people something that they understand in their daily lives. And the thing that that I like to incorporate all the time is just take a heart valve.
Okay.
10 years ago, if you needed a heart valve replaced, they had to crack your chest open, pull it apart, and do an open heart surgery on you to replace that valve. And then about 5 years ago, they were breaking your ribs in your side as the technology improved and going in that way. You still had problems. Now they put 2 needles in each side of your groin, go up into your artery system, and they pop in a new valve. That's what's happening. That's what's happening down there. The technology is the top of the line right now. I've been dealing with this project since 2012. When we went down to see Norco, we were down and I saw what the plant was that was built 60 years ago. And I smelled the smells and saw the sights and saw the effect it had on business. And it solidified my decision to go with this because Beaver County needed a jolt. And as far as the safety concerns, I just built a house 8 years ago, half a mile up the hill from the plant.
And that was 4 years into knowing that the plant's probably showing
Oh,
up.
absolutely. But people are afraid of change more or less than anything else. And my favorite line, is I was raised 7 blocks from a blast furnace and coke oven, and I was 9 years old before I realized snow didn't have black specks in it. So we've all lived through the industrialization of Beaver County. This is just a cleaner part of that occurred in the turn of the last century.
You
Yeah,
talk
well, a couple of things I want to make clear about that. The processes, and by the way, when I was a corporate trainer, I worked in Norco, Louisiana, and Geismar, Louisiana, and Deer Park, Texas, and that. I visited all those sites. Those are oil, petroleum-based refining processes. The major raw material is oil, with different chemicals, different extracts from that, an entirely different process than the natural gas process. So the smells and the soil contamination and the issues that they were facing and still face down in Louisiana and Texas are totally different than what this is based on. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. Yeah, they both make polyethylene to some degree, but it's not the same. Not even close to being the same.
724-843-1888 or 774-1888 if you'd like to call a question in for the commissioners. Jack Manning and Tony Amadio are my guests. If you want to, you can also post your question in the comments section of the live stream. Let's get to the second part. Jack's got more.
My second point was I was accused. I answer every press request I get from whether it's environmental magazines or chemical engineering news or whatever it is. And I was.
Is there a chemical engineering news?
Oh yeah, I used to get it when I worked in the industry.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Gives you a breakdown of everything that's happening around the world.
The fumes off that fresh printing had to be stupendous.
Spirit Master.
Oh, nice.
But I was accused in one of these articles of being somewhat Pollyannish and that I was trying to revive the steel days. I've said all along, and I think Tony and Dan I want to put words in their mouth. We're not trying to put all our eggs into a petrochemical business. We have to diversify the economy. We've been working on diversifying the economy, and we're still in eds and meds. You've heard me use that term before. Healthcare and education based primarily, finance, technology, trucking, distribution, home building, construction. I mean, it has to be a mix. Our manufacturing base had dwindled down to close to 10% of the total population. And the reason that I'm adamant about those advanced manufacturing jobs and technology-based jobs like the Shell cracker plant is they pay so much more than working in the hospitality industry, working in the restaurant industry, working there. And the disposable income to be able to support the downtown businesses comes from those higher paying wages. So anything we can do to raise the median wage rate is important. And manufacturing has historically always been that key component that helps raise that median wage that gives more money to be spent in Beaver County.
But Eddie, it all goes back to one word again, education. You have to be able to educate the kids, to let them know what's available to them, that they don't necessarily have to go to college to be successful in life, that they can go to a trade school. And we've been working the Midland School, our VOTEC school.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, We're working
Community
hard
college,
to
I mean,
get our people on task to learn these jobs. And I'm tired of hearing it. It only created 600 jobs. It was 8,000 jobs. We didn't have a union house that had anybody working, that wasn't working. And now that all the foreign plates are starting to go away, that factory, 600 people there. I mean, there's probably going to be another 600 there just working on the systems there.
Yeah,
constantly contractors there constantly, just like down in Shippingport. I mean, when I was studying for my master's, I worked down at Shippingport. I ran a warehouse on the weekends. And I saw what was happening. The contractors were coming in and out and doing all this work over and above the actual people that work there. So it's good for Beaver County. It's good for people in our county to get good jobs, good high-paying jobs.
Are there people that no matter how you explain it just aren't going to listen to it?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
there are people, and I get this, that are ideologically opposed to anything oil and gas, and they want to stop fracking, they want to stop pulling stuff out of the ground, they want everything to be renewables. The trouble with that is, and I learned this at Washington and Jefferson, if you stop oil and gas, you stop asphalt, concrete making, home construction, paper mills. I mean, you name it, it's all based on the need for either oil and gas or the chemicals that come out of the oil and gas. I mean, if you've ever driven past or visited a paper mill before,
Yeah.
I guarantee you it's going to be nastier than what Shell is building here.
I flew over
Right.
the one in Georgia or Augusta. I mean, I was going to
the
visit.
bleaches, the chemicals,
It's terrible.
the
smell.
acids that they use to make paper. It's just,
If you drive
It's
Highway
incredible.
41 north within about 10 miles of Terre Haute, Indiana, you knew you were within 10 miles of Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yeah.
It is its own unique smell. Well, what do you tell people when well, what about the flaring? Because you can technically
That's
explain
safe.
to them that's a safety
Safety.
measure and that's
They're-
actually doing
they're-
good.
First of all, when they're flaring, they're losing money. And I guarantee you, they're not going to flare if they don't have to.
Right.
But it's there as an emergency backup. They're in test mode right now. They're in startup test mode. So you're going to see the propensity of that. And they informed the community that could happen. When they're in full steady production, you should rarely, if ever, never see those flares go
It's like blowing out the carbon before you take the car out.
Maybe.
Said the man that's never speeded in his life. Are people watching to see, what do you call it, the downriver jobs, the
Downstream
your
jobs.
downstream
Downstream,
jobs? Are they paying attention to that? Are you starting to see that, other than the contractors and the steady workforce?
Well, they are, but I always like to point to the non-petrochemical business that
Okay.
has come into Beaver County because Shell gave us the best advertising campaign you could get for something's happening in Beaver County. Maybe I need to look at it, right? From St. Barnabas to AGH to
A lot
Mission
of people,
Technology
yeah.
to all kinds of investment and stuff. I mean, people talk about all those Ryan homes behind the mall
Yeah.
sold out. They're trying to build more. I mean, the new construction, a lot of young families moving into the area. I got accused in one article of being Pollyannish because people were leaving the county, and it referred to an article that referred to two families who said they decided to move into Moon Township from Beaver County. Like people are fleeing Beaver County. And I say, and where did all those people come from?
We see the building
behind
permits.
them,
The building permits are coming through like crazy.
In Hopewell and Economy and Chippewa, there's new developments, and the reinvestment that's happening in our legacy river towns. In
Ambridge
Ambridge.
is a completely
Ambridge
different
is
planet
going
than 10 years ago.
gangbusters right now. Beaver Falls, Monaca, Rochester, Aliquippa has got tremendous reinvestment and people coming there. So I don't know. People get locked into their view, and they accuse us of not seeing the big picture, but they're not seeing the big picture when you look at the total investment that's coming to Beaver County. Where I temper people's enthusiasm, having worked in that industry and knowing that, and I think I may have mentioned this before, a pound of polyethylene is a pound of polyethylene sold, delivered. So if you're in Irvine, California, or you're in Indiana, PA, you're paying the same price. So if I'm making Procter & Gamble Tide detergent jugs in Ohio or Illinois or Indiana, I'm not going to pick up that plant and move it here because in one day's trucking drive, I can get just-in-time inventory. If I'm making Mattel toys in New York, I'm not going to move my toy making factory or my pipe making factory here because I can already get the product in one day's drive. Where I think you're going to see a lot of the downstream investment are people from Europe or elsewhere saying, I want to get close to this.
The glass
and moving
company.
from those things.
Right.
The
That's
glass
a perfect
company,
example.
It's a perfect example of where that doesn't happen if the cracker plant comes. There's no way somebody's porting them to Monaca, Pennsylvania, a company from Austria, coming in and buying that and reinvesting $10 million and creating significantly more jobs. I mean, just so many examples that people want to ignore and say, oh, it's only 600 jobs. When I was a plant manager at Nova, I had at least a 1-to-1, if not 2-to-1 ratio of contract workers to my permanent. I guarantee you that's closer to 1,500, 2,000 people going to be on that site earning a living from it every day.
The 600 same, and then the 800 or 900 in and out.
Oh,
Gotcha.
Yeah,
At least,
I mean,
at least.
we already know IBEW 712 and people like McCarles and Blackhawk Neff and all these companies that provide that technical support to those plants. They're going to be in and out of there all the time. It's going to be, it's a lot more than just that. And then you look at the induced jobs of how businesses have been able to stay open during the pandemic because they were spending their money.
And we have the sites. We just got to get the infrastructure to those sites. Because a lot of those plants, even down Route 18 at the time, they were all, the water was on site, the sewage was on site.
Right.
And
that's money not spent
right.
for development.
And the secret and center early on was we had pad-ready sites. We sat on them for a while because business wasn't moving.
Right.
But when business opened up, we were the only deal in town. And then it moved on, and then, of course, Chippewa, Brighton, everybody else started booming.
All right, I've got 1 minute left, and I'm going to have to ask one or both of you come back next week because I want to talk about broadband.
Okay.
Time flew. What should I have asked you that I didn't ask you? Tony, you go first.
We're way ahead of the game in broadband.
Okay.
Thanks to the board's foresight and Lance Grable initiating it and getting it moving. I'm very, very happy and very, very proud of Beaver County's position right now in broadband, especially for people like Jack here who lives out.
Thank you very
And the
much.
boonies.
Yes.
Hey, if you got beagles, you got to live out
Where I
'cause they're
live,
howlers.
I've got all these competing sites
beagles
trying
have
to.
a-
Ooh, the answering back across the hill, yeah.
Even
no.
Archie, my beagle, can't get on the internet well. The only thing I would say is we've solved a lot of the short-term problems that existed for a while, equitably distributing the ARPA money. But we've also reinvested in the future, and particularly the quality of life with the parks and recreation. We'll be doing a ribbon cutting for the new tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball courts.
Pickleball.
There you go, pickleball courts.
You're old
new
enough.
deck-
You remember when that was called cucumber ball?
No.
Miniature tennis. as you
Miniature
say.
tennis.
Miniature
That's
tennis.
what I'm going with.
New deck hockey. Brush Creek Economy Park, we're really putting a lot into the quality of life and the amenities there. And I really appreciate my colleagues doing that, and trails and some other things. That
More
we're working
importantly,
on, so.
more importantly, is the water line and sewer line that we're putting through the park.
Yep.
So next time you go to one of those little sheds to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about a spider biting you on the backside.
And that's all we've ever really wanted from our public officials.
That's a big deal.
Tony, I
That
know
water-
it is.
that
I
water line
know.
and sewer lines are
Arachnids
really-
aren't your friend. Tony Amadio and Jack Manning asked the commissioners on Teleforum on Beaver County Radio.
Insurance doesn't adequately describe what we sell. This is Bill Laughlin from Laughlin Insurance Agency. Sure, affordable insurance is the means that allow us to do it, but we really provide at the Laughlin Insurance Agency is peace of mind. It's true, worrying about risk can take the fun and joy out of almost everything. We see every day how having peace of mind can lead to more enjoyment, which, last time we checked, is a fairly priceless commodity. Make life more enjoyable. Visit LaughlinInsAgency.com.
95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with WBVP, WMBA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com, invite you to tune in to Sounds of Faith. Tune in Sunday mornings from 7 until 9 for a mix of the best sacred music of all time. Sounds of Faith is brought to you by Crawford Tire in Beaver, the William Murphy Funeral Home, City Rescue Mission, MRS Physical Therapy, Circle of Friends, J&J Spratt Funeral Home, and Rome Monument and Inspirational Gifts. Sounds of Faith, uplifting, relaxing, and inspiring radio. Sunday mornings from 7 until 9 on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with WBVP, WMVA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com.
You're listening to Beaver County Radio, 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls and 1460 WMBA Ambridge, broadcasting live from the St. Barnabas Studios.